Um, just a quick disclaimer, I'm recording this before the actual intro and everything. This is kind of ranty, and I did it all in one take, and my anxiety is quite bad, especially when talking for long periods of time. I start to get quite anxious very quickly, so you might hear me repeat the same things, even though I was reading off a script. I stammer, I'm all over the place sometimes, and I really hope that doesn't take away from the core message I'm trying to put forward in this video. And I might sound very bitter and salty towards people. That isn't my intent, but unfortunately it kind of has to come across that way in some ways, because that is just kind of the point I'm making about the industry right now, is they're gearing towards that mentality of people fighting to defend something which is marketably bad for the gaming industry. And when I say the gaming industry is dying, I don't mean money-wise. I think I did say that, but I don't mean money-wise. I mean, in general, AAA industry especially is making so much money, but the quality of games is going down, and that this whole thing that I'm going to talk about is one of the main reasons why it's going down. And I give examples, etc, etc. The indie game market is being affected by other things. That's a topic for another day, but any points I miss, please leave a comment in the description, and I will try my best to explain my point, or to explain things I missed, because as I said, this is a really big topic and I can't explain it all in like a 20-minute video. It would take like 40 minutes. Thanks guys.
Alright, hi everyone, Crimson Pat here, and today is something a little bit different. I actually even wrote like a mild script for this, and because the other video I made was like 40 minutes long, and it just went on so many tangents. So I guess let's just get into this mess. The main point of this video is the games industry is basically grasping at straws and is kind of dying, and will carry on down this path, not money-wise. Now, this is what people have to realise. Money-wise, the games industry is still amazing. But the problem is that's such a small-sighted thing that it's never going to hold true forever. And the reason it is dying is because of how much money it is making. There is no longer a opinion-based argument about this. This is now facts. And we are seeing these facts very, very clearly. In evidence with Destiny 2, and with EA and Visceral Games and Battlefront 2, these are no longer ifs and buts. They are becoming truths that a lot of people have been seeing for a long time and have done nothing about. But basically, I want to get to the core of things by explaining my argument with Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, and explaining to you why this is a problem, not just for Destiny, but why Destiny 2 is a problem for the entire gaming industry, and why Activision and EA, as developers, as publishers, are absolutely just destroying what we hold dear, and people for some reason are defending it. They are defending being scammed, they are defending the death of the games industry, and they are defending the death of the games industry as they know it. The games industry will not die, but it will become a shell of its former self. And if you enjoy games, this is something you do not want happening, because we have seen it happen within companies before, but this will be on an entirely different scale. So if you think about it, the way Destiny 1 was built is from the ground up. Like anything else, it had to go through design stages, it had to go through development problems, which it did have a lot, and so did Destiny 2, all been fair. But the difference is Destiny 1 was a completely new IP. Fundamentally, comparing them is ridiculous. You can't. Because you cannot say that Destiny 2's base game is better than Destiny 1's on the opinion of them being separate IPs, considering one is a sequel. You cannot say, oh, well, it's better than the base game, which means they did a better job. No, you can't say that. I'm sorry, that's not an opinion. That is a fact. You cannot say that, because Destiny 2 had a 3-year beta, basically, in Destiny 1. They went through the trial and error of making a bad base game. They went through the trial and error of learning what to do and not to do. And the very fact that we see things like the dubious volley, which is what we named it as a community, aka the Wardcliffe's Coil, something that was designed before the Taken King was released, now being content inside Destiny 2, is a really big problem. The very fact that the custom character creation is identical shows that there is so little effort put into this game in so many areas. Yes, it's not copied and pasted. That is a misconception. There is still effort in changing things into a new game. But the amount of effort in comparison to building it from the ground up is abysmally different. Abysmally. Especially because you have to take into the fact that it did not have to model these characters again, they didn't have to texture these characters again, rig them again, animate them again. They used a lot of pre-made stuff, and the new stuff that they made was still on existing rigs, was still on existing characters, and was still on existing stuff. The only stuff they would have to have added to those rigs was new armor, new particle effects, etc., which is all difficult. But you have to think, where is the effort that went into the original creation of these characters and animation and rigging? Where was all of that effort in this? It can't have all been just making new armor and making new animation, because that's a ridiculous statement. So comparing the two is fundamentally wrong. You cannot say in any sense that just because Destiny 2's base game is better than Destiny 1's base game, in general, that means they did a better job. That is ridiculous. Because that is like me saying, as a toddler, I pooed on the floor because I was a toddler, and as a 23-year-old man, I pooed on the floor, but I cleaned it up afterwards. Fundamentally, yes, I did a better job, but at the age of 23, I should know better than to poo on the floor. You know what I'm saying? It's ridiculous to say because it does not make sense, because there has been years of learning and experiences and designs and everything that go into a company and a game that make it just completely ridiculous to say that they are, by any stretch of the imagination, comparable when it comes to levels of effort. And the main reason this is a big issue for me is a lot of people like to say, or go somewhere else if you don't like it. I'm sorry, I'm going to defend the games industry that I love. I am a consumer, and I also want to be a developer at some point. It was my dream, but with my illnesses, and by the looks of things, I might never get to live that dream. But that does not mean I want the industry that I fell in love with from, like, the age of 4 to go down the path that it is currently going down. And I'm going to use my own words here to describe how I turned around that argument, and the person completely just turned into a child, obviously. Oh, you're just gay, you're this, you're that. But because they couldn't defend what I was saying. They were saying basically that Bungie had Destiny 1 was better than Destiny 2 was better than Destiny 1's base game, etc., and fundamentally they looked very similar, but they designed them in a way that they build off of one another. But that is bad. And this is what I had to say. It either says a lot about you as a consumer, that you will defend Bungie and its games design on its failures, or that the very fact that as a company they would rather base it off the least successful years of the game, rather than basing it off the last year where they'd gone through trial and error and roll back 3 years of processing and evolution of a game and base it off a terrible launch and seek to emulate it and make a second broken game based off of the original broken game. Which is fundamentally what I said. I couldn't get the comment, but that is my... I used to use the word fundamentally a lot. That's basically kind of what I said. And what I mean by that is that Bungie, by the looks of things, feel like they designed Destiny 2 off of launch Destiny. It doesn't feel like they based it off Rise of Iron Destiny at all. And there are a few things that kind of allude to this, that this actually might be true. And once again, it is things like the Wardcliffe's Coil, and designs that have been on places like ArtStation, which are now in the game, but also the fact that for some reason Saladin doesn't even remember we were an Iron Lord. That's funny. And the Iron Banner seems to be really broken, even though they kind of fixed the spawning systems and everything. These feel like old systems that are being put into place. And I feel like maybe it's Bungie trying to see how far they can push this ridiculousness, and how much they can get away with, and people will still defend them with their last breath. Basically, what inspired me to sort of talk about this more openly was the recent DLC announcement. I think Osiris is a fucking very interesting character, and I love the story of Destiny. I love the lore of Destiny, and don't get me wrong, Destiny 2 steps in the right direction in so many ways. But maybe that was 3 years ago, was the correct ways of stepping forward. They already did all this. What Destiny 2 has done is fix things that didn't need fixing for monetary gain. And that is a just gigantic issue. Take Star Wars Battlefront 2, which recently came out yesterday. You have to see that there is a credit cap. You can't earn a certain amount of credits after a while. You have to take a 3-hour break from the game, or just play it without any rewards, because they don't want you to be able to beat the whales that are going to spend $1,000 or £1,000 on the game on the battlefield. They don't want you to fight those people. They want you to lose to them, so you go out and say, well, in this 3 hours, I guess if I spend £10, that'll be averagely the same as if I played for 3 hours, and then you get into this system. And that is the same with Eververse. Now, it's not about in-game power, but every time you get a bright engram, where do you go? Oh, you go to Eververse. You didn't have a sparrow for the entire game. That was really annoying. Something that should have been in the base game. Oh, well, I guess Eververse gave me one of those. She made my experience better. You are getting this little bit of, like, serotonin release every time you go to Eververse, rather than getting it in-game. At the end of Vault of Glass, feeling the Mythoclast drop, or seeing someone else get the Mythoclast, was a rush of emotion. They're trying to bring out that type of passion every time you go to Eververse, somewhere you can spend real money, rather than in their game, where that passion should be distributed over the entire of the activities. Exotic engrams are fantastic. Why are they the only thing we get? Why is everything watered down to the point where you have to go to the tower to get every single thing? Nothing will ever beat the Mythoclast. The Arceus, whatever it's called, the shotgun, will never beat the story or the development process that you took getting the Touch of Malice. Because that had some form of passion in it. It had some form of smart design. The Touch of Malice quest had its problems, don't get me wrong. The Taken King had its problems, but it fixed so many issues from the base game that there is no excuse that even those practices weren't in Destiny 2. The very fact, if they had even based Destiny 2 off of the Taken King's process of thought, it would have been a massively better game. But rather than that, they just went back. They rolled back 3 years of evolution and just said, fuck it, we're going to base it off of designs that haven't gone anywhere yet. Now, that is kind of the gist of things, of why I feel it's bad, and the DLC was what inspired this, as I said. The whole system of Destiny 2 being released with one raid, and now we're seeing that this raid is getting sub-raids. Basically, what they sound like could be a fucking very cool concept, like an extremely cool concept. They are raids on the Leviathan, but they could be on planets that's sucked in, so it could just be basically a whole entire Vault of Glass in there. But what I'm thinking it's going to be is it's going to be a Cabal thing where you go onto the ship and you're going to explore broken bits of rock and a Cabal ship again. And I think I should have seen this when I saw those hundreds of Callus robots. That Destiny love recycling. You felt with Iron Banner without barely any lore. The lore was even wrong within Iron Banner. And it wouldn't surprise me if every boss was Callus, just another robot of Callus with a slightly different moveset. Why wouldn't they do that? Of course, they said there's a new boss. Hear that? Boss. Not bosses. Boss. So it's going to be a challenged-based raid again, which is just terrible. The raid was okay, but a raid is an end-game activity where you're meant to use everything you learnt over the game to show that you have mastered it. What gave you that opportunity? What in the entire storyline said, I need to shoot these things in the opposite direction when a light appears in a hole so that my teammate can run through and collect an orb? A Bungie dev told people what that was on a live stream. Because if you remember, who was the first person in the world to complete the raid? Oh, someone that worked at Bungie. What a fucking surprise. Because no one in their right mind would think that was a thing. It makes sense. In the context of the other game, like, take the example of War Priest. Oh, a giant Oryx head appears. Wait, on the back of these statues, when we all step on the plates, these Oryx faces light up, a bit like when he spawned in. Oh, Let's have a look at those during the encounter. Oh, okay, wow. One of them is lit up right now. Step on that plate. We didn't get wiped, or the plates didn't set on fire. I think I've got a plan. Let's step on them in an order. Boom, logical progression, logical moves. It makes sense. A little bit of scanning the room would tell you that. Scanning the room in the gauntlet would tell you nothing about the game's design. Scanning the room in the gauntlet would tell you absolutely nothing about the encounter whatsoever, other than there are plates, there is a weird room in the back, and there are symbols above the doors. Um, what tells you that you have to do it backwards in there? Nothing. But they didn't think of that. They said, "Oh, we'll just tell people and they'll get it." That is fundamentally bad games design. And my main question is especially with having basically 50% of the game done, is where did all this extra effort and money actually go? Where did all of the time and effort go in taking back the shader system? Why did that become a thing? It was changed to be monetizable. We had content ripped from the game that we love for monetary reasons. How many people do you know that wanted the timepiece? How many people did you know that wanted the aspect of glass? People would go back to those raids, they would make 3 characters for the very reason that they had something to go into Vogue for. They had a reason to beat Atheon. Why do we have a reason to beat Callus? There's no reason to beat him on more than one character, really. There's no reason to do those encounters more than once a week. And actually, at this point, I have no reason to do the raid at all. I don't even need to do it on Prestige. Prestige is completely optional. All of the challenge modes can be done on normal. And that is just a huge fucking problem. And yes, if this DLC fixes all this, that's great. But is it too little too late? Is that their cutoff point? Is this what we are to expect from their next games? Is, oh, this is how much shit people are willing to put up with before they drop off our game? Because that is what you're defending. You are defending basically a drop-off point for the games industry. And that is going to absolutely turn around and bite you in the ass. The main reason all this is happening is because people like Take-Two and everything like that, and EA, turn around and want every game to be GTA 5. There was literally, even I think Take-Two were the people that said every game is going to have microtransactions in it because we need a GTA 5 again. We need things like GTA 5 all the time. But that can't happen. For Christ's sake, one of the best games in the last decade was Dead Space. That franchise was killed because of microtransactions. Dead Space 3 felt like garbage because there was so much effort trying to put on that weird system that just didn't feel right. And it didn't make sense in the core game. It took away from any sense of logical progression. And it was okay, but it wasn't a good game by any stretch in comparison to the first one. And Dead Space still holds up today. Dead Space you can go play today and it's still a fantastic game. Dead Space 2 is okay, it's got some really good psychological stuff, it's not as good, but the challenges of Dead Space are ridiculously hard. There's so much effort put into those games and passion. And now what happened to the company that made them? They got shut down by EA. Visceral Games is gone. Because their games were not making the same level of money as GTA. Because they weren't making the same level of money as FIFA. Because they weren't making the same level of money as, now, Destiny. Microtransactions were put into the game with our goodwill alongside them, saying that's fine as long as you do recent updates that are free to make the game more fun for people that don't want to pay them, aka the April update. But now where is that money going? Where is that money going into game development? There's none. They don't have to even code drops in of sparrows or ghosts on the Callus fight. They don't have to put shaders into the Callus fight. They just put it all into Eververse. They put everything into Eververse so that every time you get a drop and that sense of euphoria about a game or a sequence of events, it's at the place where you can spend real money. And that is what Battlefront is doing. They want you to get that feeling of success, and then they want the game itself to make you feel down when you play it by capping the amount of credits you can get. Because they want you to feel down when you play the game, and they want you to feel your biggest highs when you're spending real money. But you are defending that. You are literally defending the death of the games industry. Let's use a bit of a metaphor here. Imagine if You wanted to go to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, and you went to the Vegas Gordon Ramsay restaurant, and you got a McDonald's burger from him. Gordon Ramsay himself gave you a McDonald's level burger. And you're like, it's alright, I like McDonald's, but I didn't want to spend 10 times the amount for a McDonald's burger. Then, the next year you think, maybe it was a fluke, maybe he accidentally bought McDonald's and gave me his lunch. You know, he's only a world-class chef, that could happen. Then you go back next year, and you find out he's now using microwavable burgers. And you're like, hang on, these are worse than McDonald's burgers, and they're £1 in shops. So now I'm paying 100 times what I was meant to be paying for something which I could get at my local shops. And then you think, right, this is wrong. And you go up to him and you hear him having a meeting and he's like, right, we're making more money than ever, so now we need to cut it back again, and rather than that we need to give them base ingredients and they make it themselves. And you're like, Gordon, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, oh, well, the more money we make, the less effort we put in. You would question it. You'd go, I'm not fucking coming here again. I'm gonna go somewhere else and spend my money. So why do you put up with the same levels of shit when the games industry does it to you? Why do you put up with that same level of nonsense when Activision and Bungie are doing the exact same thing, but rather than doing it behind your back, they're doing it to your face? They're spitting in your face openly. And people did say to me, why didn't you just not buy the game? Because why did you like that food that you ate, but didn't like it before you ate it? Oh, because you hadn't tried it before? What a fucking shock. But you liked something of the same variety, so that's what inspired you to eat it. Oh, what a shock. Why did you try that chocolate that you'd never tried before? Because I like chocolate. Oh, really? I liked Destiny 1 at year 3 as a designer. Like, I do design. I would design Destiny 2 off of year 3 Destiny, because that was when it was at its peak of amazing design. It was at its best at year 3. And that is where you would logically base your game off. Destiny 2 had no reason to fail. And now it's failing and dropping a player base because of greed. And this is the next step in the games industry. This is where people like EA and Activision are pushing it, because they want to see how much you are willing to put up with, and how much you are willing to defend a game against people that are willing to talk out without any form of backlash. And EA is now getting a backlash. People are voting with their wallets. People like me are voting with their wallets. But it's not enough, because people are still streaming the game. People like CNANers are still doing monetized advertising for the game. Why? I understand they're making money, but this is their industry. I just burped as well, that was fucking disgusting. This is where they want to work. This is where they make their livelihood. Do you really want to make your livelihood mediocre? Of course you don't. So stand up to it. Say something about it. Don't let this happen to the industry that we have loved for 20, 30 years. I'm not even 30, but I've loved gaming since I was a child. I remember playing Space Invaders with my father when I was like 4, and playing GoldenEye, my N64, everything. All these just amazing games that I remember, which had so much passion, and feeling that progression in the games industry was crazy. Where is the Bungie that gave us Halo? The progression there was crazy. The amount of difference between Halo Combat Evolved and Halo 3 was phenomenal amounts of progression. Why are we now, 10 years later, standing up and defending regression? That is stupid and completely arse backwards. We are literally regressing ourselves to defend regression. And it's fucking crazy. It is absolutely crazy. But as I said, I don't want this to go on forever, and this is just my standpoints on it, and I honestly can't say anymore because it's just fucking just mental amounts of, there's so much to say, and it would literally take hours and hours of breaking down the game and showing you why what they're doing is just so fundamentally wrong. And yes, when I say your opinion is non-existent, I don't mean not liking the game. What I mean is you can no longer defend it off of the opinion that they didn't have any form of pre-justification to make the game good. aka the 3 years of Destiny 1.
Zone C. Zone advantage is
Well, this was a
Zone
thing,
B
and
captured. That's a
I'd like
power
to hear your
play.
guys' opinions,
You took them.
and
Now hold.
if you're going to thumbs down the video and completely just hammer me with insults, go for it, because that's completely fine. That's up to you. But I would like to open up a more intelligent conversation about this, because I personally think something needs to be done now. And as someone who is ill, and I basically spend my entire time doing nothing but laying in bed feeling like garbage, sitting in my chair feeling like garbage, and playing video games, I don't want the one entertainment I have, other than Jack and my tiny micro dick, to be dead. That's just the simple fact of it. That is just the simple fact of it. And speaking of micro, since when the fuck is $3.99 a microtransaction? That is 5% of the game's initial cost, basically. That is not a microtransaction, that's a pretty substantial transaction, if you fucking ask me. Considering, apparently recently, rich people think if students stop buying meal deals for the Americans, that is where you get a sandwich, a pack of crisps, and a drink for £3, that is the reason we can't afford houses, apparently. You just loan 28 grand from your parents. That'll be the day, eh? Peace out, guys. And as always, have a good one.
Zone C captured. You have advantage. 30 seconds. Fight on. Zone C lost. It's all or nothing. I could not ask for a better victory. The weight of the world was on your shoulders, and still you triumphed. Marvelous.